that the IT major faces, especially the threat of class action suits. I have with me legal expert Sandip, Bhagat, partner at S&R Associates, and we'll also be joined by Vijay Govindrajan in just a second. Sandip, appreciate you joining us here on the show. Let me start by asking you about the threat of legal action, specifically in the US. Now, what we do know, and of course, devil always lies in the detail, is that 3 US law firms have initiated investigation against Infosys for alleged securities fraud. Given what we do know about the context of the claims being made at this point in time, the response that's coming from the board, the fact that there was an internal investigation that was conducted by an independent party, a US-based law firm at that, which is given a clean sheet, do you believe that this will have legs to stand on?
So I'm not too sure, Shireen, what the basis of the lawsuit is. If ultimately it can't be that they are suing because the CEO has resigned. That can't be the basis of a lawsuit. If the lawsuit is that there is a issue with the disclosure which has been made by Infosys in the past, then yes, that's something for the board of Infosys to consider. They have presumably already considered this in the past allegations. But the question here would be that, I'm assuming, is that they are trying to allege that the past allegations, there's something more to them than what has currently been disclosed, and maybe that's the basis of their lawsuit. Otherwise, I can't understand why there is a lawsuit here.
No, you're absolutely right on that. And of course, this is the information that we do have at this point in time. But, I want to point out and get your comment on that, Sandip. Infosys to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, as a risk factor, had stated that activist shareholders could destabilize the affairs of the company. Now, given the fact that this has clearly been put forward on the table by Infosys as a risk, how do you see that as potential air cover?
I think it helps. Ultimately, if there is a class action lawsuit which is happening first, the plaintiff lawyers have to determine and get together a class of shareholders. That's the number one question. Who is the class? How is the class identified? And then, is there basis for that class action to go ahead? Those are the issues for the US court to consider. Even if that happens, the tender offer, the buyback is a separate process which is happening. If the board is going ahead with it, presumably the board has thought about issues like, we don't have anything else out there. We are giving this offer. You're welcome to tender in your shares. But there is no material price sensitive information out there. And the disclosure which we have been making until now is correct. So I think if those are the basis upon which the company is going ahead, I'm not too sure what the class action lawsuit is doing in this process. There may be, if the regulators step in, etc. But even that, I think the process which will happen here is there will be a letter of offer which will go to the shareholders. That letter of offer goes through a SEBI review process. So if at least the regulator here, wants to raise questions, maybe they will. But again, I'm not too sure what more can the company be doing at this stage for purposes of this. I mean, certainly the board should be considering, as probably already considered, what the disclosure is already there in the market and that it doesn't have anything else in terms of disclosure for someone to be, selling their shares.
Right. Okay. Sandip, from a regulator's point of view, and today the market regulator was here in the capital, and when asked about how they were viewing the Infosys situation, Ajay Tyagi, the SEBI chief, basically said that, look, we're looking at it, but that's about it as of now. Now, the fact of the matter is that, as is evident from various statements that have come in from the board, from Mr. Murthy, and the latest, of course, being the letter that's come in from former independent director Omkar Goswami, which seems to suggest that the board of Infosys was catering to the requests that were being put forward by a certain class of shareholder, in this case, the former promoter founder. Could that be seen as a problem area specifically for the investors? And we heard that being raised by some investors on the conference call saying, look, we're all minority shareholders. How can you be listening to one class of shareholder and not the other?
Yeah, no, I think that's correct. I think firstly, Mr. Murthy is a shareholder. He has the right to write as many letters as he wants. I mean, I think the question is for the company to figure out how they have to react to those letters. Are those allegations serious or not? The company has conducted investigations. It has hired external law firms. And you know, presumably it believes it's appropriately covered. I think the fact that a former promoter is writing a letter or a former CEO, CFO is writing a letter, I think adds a little bit more. They probably have considered why they are writing the letter. I think from a regulator perspective, again, this has been going on for some time. I would assume the regulators would look at the company and say, okay, is everything that is material which needs to be disclosed, is it out there? And if the information is out there, either in the annual report, the current, the reporting, the ongoing disclosures, then I think the regulator has, I'm not too sure what the regulator may say in that context, or how and what basis would it have, to stop the tender offer, which was the question you had originally asked.
Yeah, you're right on that. So you believe that there is, in that sense, no real threat to the buyback offer itself. But Sandip, before I let you go, given how we've seen this play out, and the board saying that there has been a continuous assault on the managing director and CEO Vishal Sikka, which prompted him to tender in his resignation. Now you've got the possibility of the regulator looking at this issue. We know the government, of course, is seized off the matter as well, of course, can't play any part in this officially in any form or fashion. Where do you see this headed?
So look, I think the regulators will step in if there is some violation of law. And what are we really talking about? Bad governance here? I mean, is that what the regulators will come in and step in and say, look, some directors felt one way, some did not? I mean, I'm not too sure, unless there is something to point to say that the allegations which were raised by Mr. Murthy or other shareholders, which related to, the acquisition which was made, the termination payments, all of that, unless there was more merit in those allegations, in which case the past disclosures, maybe there's a problem, or, those haven't been corrected today. But I think from a regulator perspective, all we are really talking about is there a governance issue? And I think the board has probably taken a view on that. So I'm not, there is a lot of, I think, information out there in the public domain, both from the activists or from the former shareholders or current shareholders from the company. I think the regulator should be just taking a view and saying, okay, what's the violation or what law has happened? I mean, even I myself am trying to figure that out and can't get a correct answer.
All right, Sandip Bhagat, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Sandip Bhagat there of SNR Advisors. Staying with